Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 85 is a bill related to religious liberty. Specifically, I'm from District 85. House Bill 43, let me back up. House Bill 43 is a bill related to religious liberty, specifically during times of emergency. This bill has a committee sub. Mr. Speaker, would you ask the clerk to call House Committee Sub 1 to House Bill 43?
Clerk, please report.
House Committee Substitute 1 to House Bill 43.
Gentleman from Pulaski.
Move adoption.
Motion is for the adoption of House Committee Sub 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Committee Substitute 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Pulaski.
Mr. Speaker, we also have a floor amendment, House Floor Amendment 1. Would you ask the clerk to call House Floor Amendment 1 to House Bill 43?
Question before the body. Clerk, please report.
House Floor Amendment 1 to House Bill 43.
Gentleman from Pulaski.
Move adoption.
Motion is for the adoption of House Floor Amendment 1. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor signify by voting aye. Those opposed, nay. House Floor Amendment 1 is adopted. Gentleman from Pulaski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 43, as amended by House Committee Sub 1 and House Floor Amendment 1, is in response to the shutdowns that occurred in the early days of COVID. In March of 2020, the Beshear administration issued an executive order that prohibited mass gatherings. This order specified a number of examples, which included specifically faith-based organizations. The order then clarified that gatherings in shopping malls, office environments, factories, retail and grocery stores, as well as gun stores, were not prohibited. And I contend that the First Amendment is just as vital and just as important as the Second Amendment, which we hold dear to. During this time, churches were shut down. At the same time, big box retailers, grocery stores, and home improvement centers remained open. And this was a direct assault on our God-given rights that are protected in the Constitution. So why should we protect religious liberty? I'm going to give you 3 reasons why. And any one of these 3 is reason enough to protect religious liberty. It's reason enough to support this bill. First, you have the constitutional reason. Our First Amendment tells us that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Government shall not prohibit the free exercise of religion. Not on good days, not on bad days. Not when the sun's shining, not during a pandemic. Secondly, there's a biblical reason. Hebrews 10:24 and 25 says, "Let us consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of yourselves together, as is the manner of some, but exhorting one another, lifting one another up, and so much more as you see the day approaching." These were dark times. These were times to lift each other up, to draw together, to help one another. And lastly, there's a practical reason. A Gallup survey from December 2020 showed that there was a 9% decline in people who said their mental health was excellent from 2019 to 2020. A 9% decline. At the same time, that survey showed that there was a 4% increase in the number of people who said that their mental health was excellent for those people who attended church services weekly. At the same time, those who seldom or never attended church saw a 13% decrease in excellent mental health. Now, we've talked a lot about mental health this session. We've talked about it in children. We've talked about it in teenagers and adolescents. We've talked about suicide. We've talked about it in our older population, those people who are isolated from their families. The church plays a vital role. So what does this bill do? I'll give you a few things. House Bill 43 ensures the government does not treat churches and other religious organizations worse than other businesses that are essential during times of emergency. It puts them on a level playing field. If those grocery stores, if those other essential entities are open, so too shall religious organizations be. Number two, it ensures the state will not take adverse action against a religious organization simply for being religious. Number three, it codifies recent Supreme Court decisions that make clear that the free exercise of religion is fundamental, and government shall not treat religious organizations worse than other groups just because they are religious. And fourth, it provides a cause of action for religious organizations that have been discriminated against. A couple questions that may come up. What does a committee sub do? It does a couple simple things. It makes a few simple changes related to the condemnation language. It was a concern that came up as a result of what happened in western Kentucky with the tornadoes. We wanted to make sure that this did not affect public safety in any manner, so we fixed that. It adds adversely in a couple little places where it talks about altering tax treatment and how it affects those religious organizations. We want to make sure that there is no cause of action for someone who received better treatment that they could file a lawsuit. That's not going to happen anyway. We clarified just to make sure that that's not a concern that anyone would have. And it tightens up claims against a violation to only include those that address religious liberty. That's the committee sub. The floor amendment, it just adds some clarifying language. And that's pretty much the bill summed up, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 43 as amended by House Committee Sub 1 and House Floor Amendment 1.